All right. Kenny Thomas was with us here last year. Are we live? Okay. He's a former Army Ranger, member of the Elite Task Force Ranger Assault Unit who fought in the Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia, recounted in the book and the film Black Hawk Down. Has anyone seen that movie? Okay. He was actually one of the guys, okay? Real deal. His presentations focus on leadership, teamwork, and the importance of training. From the motto of train as you fight, fight as you train, Kenny shows us an emphasis on training and continuous improvement and how it plays a vital role in survival and success, not only in business but in life. Kenny Thomas has lived in Columbus, Georgia, and since enlisting in the Army in 1991, after completing airborne school and the Ranger indoctrination program, he was assigned to B Company, 3rd Ranger Battalion of the 75th Ranger Regiment, where he subsequently earned his Ranger tab. In the summer of 1993, Sergeant Thomas and B Company were deployed to Mogadishu as part of a special operations package called Task Force Ranger. Their mission was to find and capture a criminal warlord named Mohammed Farah Adid. Did I say that right? Close enough. Okay. On the 3rd of October, Kenny and his fellow Rangers distinguished themselves in an 18-hour firefight that would later be recounted in a highly successful book and movie, of course, Black Hawk Down. 19 Americans died and 78 were wounded in this fight, which is considered to be the worst urban combat seen by U.S. troops since World War II. Kenny stayed in the Army for 3 more years as an assistant team leader for a 6-man Ranger reconnaissance team. He earned his master parachutist rating with over 380 military free-fall jumps. He completed the Special Forces Combat Diver course, became an advanced EMT, and was one of 10 Americans to complete the Belgium Commando course. When Kenny got out of the Army, he went to work as a counselor for problematic youth. He is a national spokesperson for the Hero Fund and Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which provides college educations to the children of our special operations personnel killed in combat or training. In addition to the numerous speaking engagements for organizations ranging from Fortune 500 companies to little old us here in Nashville, Kenny is a country music star and national spokesperson for the Hero Fund and Special Operations Warrior Foundation. And he's been touring the country with his band Cornbread in support of his album Gunslinger. And all the proceeds from the album benefit the Hero Fund. Now, when I brought Kenny in last year, we only gave him a real short spot because I didn't know what kind of impact he had. But I had more people come up to me after his presentation and tell me that that presentation touched them on a deeper level than anything else. So we asked him to come back. So you guys are about to hear a tremendous speaker. So get on your feet and get your hands together for Kenny Thomas.
Thanks, y'all. So they teach you. They teach you in show business. Can we turn that down just a little bit? Because I'm gonna talk real loud. Thanks. They teach you in show business that you should never take a standing ovation for granted, and that you should end on a good note. So thanks. Good night. Appreciate you. Hey, Robin, thank you for bringing me back. It's always a good thing when someone invites you back again, because it means that you didn't suck the first time. So I'm very, very proud. But before I even get started, I want to tell you that I don't take a second of this for granted. Really, I don't. Anytime that somebody calls and says that they want to hear the story, I consider it a huge blessing, a privilege and an honor. It's an honor and a privilege because I'm really just going to tell you stories about the guys that I worked with. I don't come with a PowerPoint presentation. If I had been in the Air Force, maybe I would have come with it. They don't let us Army guys carry those little laser things. So it's a big blessing for me because I'm doing what I love to do. Truly I am. Whether I'm carrying a guitar or I'm just telling stories, I'm out here doing what I love. And I know that by the grace of God, the only reason I'm still around to do this thing is because of Him pulling us out and those guys that were on our left and our right. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm sure you get tons of, and when you go to these types of seminars, I'm sure you get tons of stuff about teamwork and how the team's so important. Yeah, well, the team is ultimately the goal, but what I'm going to talk about is the individual and about you. And I want you to walk out of here, and after you hear what I have to say and hear the stories I tell, I hope you walk away just knowing how important you are as an individual, because you're the one piece of the puzzle that makes everything work. I promise you. I don't even pretend to know what it is that you do out there. But whatever it is, you're the one piece that everybody around you is counting on. There's people on your left and there's people on your right. There always are. And they're counting on you just as you count on them to do their job and stand up and deliver. They're counting on you. And so I hope that's what you realize when you get out of this. Because the stories I'm telling you are not going to be about the generals and the colonels. It's just about the young guys who had been in the Army maybe 3 months. Some of the guys that I had that were privates and E3s and E4s that just didn't have a whole lot of experience. But they were the one piece of the puzzle that pulled everything together and got us out of there. So that's what I hope you learn from this. Now, I'll talk a little bit about planning, and I'll talk a little bit about training, and I'm going to use terms like train as you fight and fight as you train, which means basically you're only going to be as good as you prepared yourself to be. But mostly I'm going to talk about leadership, and leadership at every level. Now, sometimes I'll go into high schools and colleges, and I talk to a lot of teachers and administrators. And it's funny, you can see it when I say we're going to talk about leadership, and they kind of sag. And it's because a lot of people don't see themselves as leaders, but we're not talking about the position of leadership, the colonels, the captains. What we're talking about is leading by example and setting an example for others to follow in everything you do. That's the hard part. That's the burden of leadership. Sure, it's great to be recognized as the person in charge, but what I'm going to talk about is leadership at every level, from David Floyd, who was just in the Army for 3 months, all the way to General Garrison, who ran the whole package. Now, before I even get started, let me ask this. How many veterans do we have in here? We always have some. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it. Yeah, and if you know any of those folks that have worn the uniform, watch them when I'm telling the story. They're going to giggle at the same places that I start laughing, because the people are always the same. The uniforms might change, and the fields of battle may change, but the stories are always about that same person. And I think the reason that this story's caught on so well and it's stayed around is because it's no different than what our grandfathers in World War II will tell you, our uncles in Korea, or my dad in Vietnam, or my best friends that are over in Afghanistan and Iraq. We go over there every year with the USO. We go over there at Christmas time and spend a couple weeks in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait. And we just pretty much, we play some shows and we shake a lot of hands, and you sit down and you talk to those kids and you're like, hey, where are you from? What do you do? And within 3 to 5 minutes, they will all start telling you, man, because ultimately it comes around to the combat story. And then that story ultimately comes around to the person on the left and the person on the right. They stop talking about themselves and they start talking about the person who got them out of there. So that's what I'm here to do, and I've considered it a privilege and honor. Our story started on a Sunday. It was a 1 day off from training. We weren't even supposed to be there. I was writing a letter home to my mom. Dear Mom, it's a really nice day here in Mogadishu. And somebody walked out the airplane hangar, which is what we called our home, and they're like, all right, get it on. And that meant just like a mission was coming down, like a firefighter or a police officer gets a call. You got to drop what you're doing, gear up, and get ready to go get combat ready. Now, the missions were starting to become routine. Sometimes we would do a real insertion in the city. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we just flew around. It was routine, but you never take your routine for granted. Why? Because when you start taking things for granted, it leads to this big word called complacency, and complacency costs all kinds of issues. And in our business, the issues were lives. Complacency costs lives. So we didn't ever take anything for granted. The routine was always there, and we had these things that are called standard operating procedures, SOPs. I'll use that word a lot. SOPs, they're in place so that nothing gets skipped. This is the way that we do things. This is the preferred way that we would like you to do it. Now, there are other ways to do it, but this method has been tried and true, and at least if you do our SOPs, we know that nothing's going to get missed. So my job as a team leader, although this was a routine thing to gear up and get it on, was to go in and get my job done. And my job as a team leader was very simple. I walk into the airplane hangar, I get my guys lined up, and I start going down the line and checking gear. Some of the guys are carrying machine guns, some are carrying grenades and rocket launchers and medical bags. Now, I had packed a medical bag the night before. I knew no one had touched it. It was under my bunk. But that was part of the SOP. I did not want to take it for granted, just in case And I pulled it up, opened it up, and did my double checks and went down. I even had somebody double check me. Now, in addition to our gear, everybody's wearing about 70 pounds because you got body armor and you got all your ammo and everything. In addition, I was carrying a rifle. I had the medical bag. I had a shotgun that was sawed off, and I Velcroed it to my hip. And then I had this thing called a Law, which is a light anti-tank weapon. It's a little rocket launcher. And, man, I hated it. I hated carrying it because it would get in my way, but mostly I hated it because it weighed 4.5 pounds. Look at me. I weigh 160. You put 70 pounds of gear on me, and it was... And then they give you, hey, you got one more thing to stick on your back. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, Sergeant Watson, how come I got to carry this thing? Because they don't have any tanks. And Sergeant Watson's our platoon sergeant. He's like, well, it's better to have and not need, Sergeant Thomas, than to need and not have. And I'm not carrying it, so you will. Yeah. Right. Roger that, Sergeant. So... Now, in the infantry, a squad is usually 8 to 10 guys, but we've always been a little bit short-handed in the Rangers, so we only had 5 men. I'm going to introduce you to them. There was Doug Bourne was the squad leader. Doug was from Texas. Doug was an E5, a sergeant, buck sergeant. I was an E5, buck sergeant. We had both pinned on our stripes on the same day. Really, to this day, I still do not know why Doug was the squad leader. Officially, he outranked me, and I remember I was asking one, I said, Sergeant Watson, how come Bourne gets to be the squad leader? Because he's from Texas. Man, if you've ever been to Texas, you'll understand. They got something going on over there that we don't. So, Doug goes into the briefing room. So now I got my 3 men. Usually there's 2 team leaders, but we didn't have enough guys to warrant having another team leader, so it was just me. And I'm going down the line. Let me introduce you to him. There was Melvin DeJesus. DeJesus was an E4. He was a specialist, meaning he had been around about a year in the military. He had just come back from Ranger school. He had his Ranger tab. We were kind of grooming him to be a new team leader, and he was one of these hard kids. I didn't call him a kid. He was 22, but he was a hard young man. He was from the hood in Puerto Rico. And I'm telling you, DeJesus, the only reason that he was even in the military was because the judge back in Puerto Rico gave him an option, which was, son, you can go into the military or you can go to jail. What would you like to do? I would take the Army, right? So DeJesus is one of the guys you're just glad he was on our side, right? And there was nothing you could ever show him that he hadn't already seen because he was so street hard, right? I remember one day we're trying to train him on this Carl Gustav. It's a rocket launcher, man. This thing can penetrate 6 inches of armored steel. Are there any questions? Yes, DeJesus. Yo, man, in Puerto Rico, everybody had a rocket launcher. Wow. I'm glad you're on my side, man. There was Eric Saransky, who was just a good, solid kid from the Midwest. He had done 2 years of community college, came in the military, wanted to serve his country. I was glad to have him. He was squared away. And then there was David Floyd. Now, David Floyd, how many people here are from the South? Grew up in the South. Okay, so y'all know when I tell you David Floyd was what we in the South call bless your heart. Meaning, when David comes walking up, you're just like, whoa, bless your heart, man. David, we nicknamed him Soup, which is a short word for a soup sandwich, which a soup sandwich is, it's not good for a whole lot of anything. It's like a football bat. It's all ate up. And you're like, Floyd, he can't do anything. And Floyd was from, everybody, when I go to the high schools, I don't even use this analogy, but you guys you're old enough to know who Barney Fife is. Floyd looked just like him. He was from South Kakalaki, Carolina. He was all skinny, and he was, you're free. And I don't really know how Floyd made it into the Ranger Regiment, to tell you the truth, because it's not an easy place to get to. You got to do a lot of volunteering. You got to volunteer for the Army. You got to get through basic training. You got to go through AIT. You got to volunteer through jump school. You got to volunteer for the Ranger Indoctrination Program. Then you got to make it into the Ranger Regiment and spend the first few months they're just getting yelled at and hammered because they're really just trying to mess with your headspace just to see if you really want to be there. And somehow Floyd managed to hang on, but he couldn't pass any of his tests. And he was such a pain in my butt for the guy who was directly in charge of him. It would have been so much easier if I could have just gotten rid of him. He couldn't pass anything on the first try. The Army holds standards, and then the Ranger Regiment would set those standards just a little bit higher. And Floyd wouldn't make it. Whether it was a proficiency test or some physical fitness test, he always managed to screw it up by just that much on the first try. And I started learning. And the lesson I learned was that first time we went out there and we did a 20-mile road march. You had to finish it in a certain amount of time. Well, I'm a pretty fast guy. And they said, go. And I was going to show everybody in my squad just how fast I was. And I took off and finished, and it was great. And I went, had a drink of water, and about an hour later, here comes Floyd, 3 minutes late. Who's getting yelled at? Was Floyd getting yelled at? No, Sergeant Thomas, get in here. Why didn't Floyd pass his road march this morning? Do push-ups. I was doing more push-ups for Floyd than I ever did for me. Ever. And come Saturday, when everybody else had been let go and got to go on a weekend pass, who's out there walking that road march again? 20 miles isn't fun to walk. You got 50 pounds on your back, your feet ache, your shoulders ache. Everybody in here could do it physically, but just it doesn't feel good. Much less go out and walk it again on top of the blisters you got. Floyd, Saransky, DeJesus, Doug Bourne, and myself are all walking it again. Why? Because one man didn't pass the test. And you may think, well, that's not fair. You let him go out and do it again. But that's not the way it works, because you're as good as your weakest link. That's the bottom line. We do not get to choose, unless you are the grand poobah, you do not get to choose all the people you work with and associate with and come to contact with on a day-to-day basis that you have to count on. I didn't get to choose who I worked with, but all I could do was hold them to a higher standard. You set your standards high. Don't bring the standards down to the median to make everybody feel good about themselves, because then what happens? You have a lot of mediocrity, and no one feels great being part of a mediocre team. We all want to be part of something that's winning. We all want to be part of something that's great. You've never, ever heard a coach come on the TV on Saturday or Sunday afternoon and say, Coach, how y'all going to do this year? How do you think your chances are in the game? I think we're pretty mediocre. We're rocking. You want to be as good as you possibly can be, and the only way you can do that is to get everybody you can to hold them to the highest standards. Now, at some point, if they continue to fail at meeting those standards, then you got to let them go, and you got to send them someplace else, because there's other jobs in the Army, just maybe not with the Ranger Regiment. Now, Sergeant Watson's my platoon sergeant. I kind of already introduced you to him. He's down in the briefing room, and he comes out with a piece of paper. It's about this big. It's a photograph of the objective. It's a black and white photograph, an aerial target. And he puts it down on the ground. He says, everybody gather around. The whole platoon kind of huddles up, and he looks down and he goes, this is the target building right here in downtown Mogadishu. He goes, that's the corner of the building we're going to rope in at. Any questions? That was it. 10 minutes. I was writing a letter home to my mom. It was supposed to be a day off. I wasn't even supposed to be working, and just like that, everything changed. My whole life changed in an instant. 10 minutes, which is less time than it takes most of us to show up at a meeting nowadays and get sat down and get ourselves together. We had our plan. We had our mission. We knew where we were going, who we were after, how we were going to get there, how we would get back. We had a backup plan, and we were locked and loaded heading to the aircraft, and the rotors were already spinning. Do not mistake the minimal time that's spent in a huddle with being poorly prepared. We're not winging it. We're not making it up on the fly. There's a huge difference, because if you train hard in advance and you use tough, realistic training where you train as you fight, so that when a moment comes and you have to fight, you will fight just as good as you train. Train as you fight as you train. I'm not making this stuff up. You will be as good as you prepared yourself to be, and that does not mean just combat. It means everything in your life. And preparing yourself is all about building that foundation of character, and we're going to start getting into that. All right. Let me tell you why Task Force Ranger was in town. It's a quick flight. We're going in. It's 3 minutes in. There's about 18 helicopters in the air. They're full of special operations personnel. Task Force Ranger was sent there to Mogadishu in August of '93 to go get a warlord. His name was Mohammed Farah Aidid. Aidid was a bad man. He had been attacking the United Nations. When the food shipments began to get attacked and robbed, American troops were asked to guard the food shipments. When they started getting attacked and killed by a warlord, we were then sent in to go get him. We were not there to feed the hungry as Task Force Ranger. We were not there to be part of the peacekeeping. We were there to kick in a door and bring a bad guy to justice. Pretty much is what our job was. And if we couldn't get him, we were going to start taking out his infrastructure. We had been there for 3 months. 3 months, and we had not gotten him yet. We thought we would own that place because we were the Delta. We were the Rangers. We were the Navy SEALs. We were the 160th Special Operations Air Regiment. It doesn't get any better. We even had Air Force Special Operations guys. Of course, I never saw them much. They were hanging out on the beach with their condominiums that got flown in for them. It was nice. Yeah. When they had air conditioning, even. When I go and talk to the high schools or the colleges, the recruiter will usually try and sponsor it, or at least he'll get up there and introduce me. And afterwards, you'll have some kids will come up and they're like, "Hey, I'm thinking of joining the Rangers. You got any advice?" And I'll look around and I'm like, "Yeah, dude, join the Air Force, man." Quality of life. It's such a great thing. And So we were this unprecedented special operations package sent in to get this one guy, and we still hadn't gotten him. And that starts taking its toll on morale. When you set a goal for yourself, and then you have this time frame. Okay, here's what we want to do. Here's what we want to accomplish, and here's the time frame in which we want to accomplish it. When does it ever happen as easy and as quickly as you want it to? It doesn't. And it's an uphill climb. Anything worth having takes a lot of hard work. And this was taking its time, and it was starting to take its toll on our morale. And as the person who leads by example, sure, the people in charge got to combat that, but as the person right here, sitting in the middle of everybody, if you start hearing someone around you go, man, what's the point? What are we doing here? That is an erosion of the foundation upon which the whole team is built. That's the one little piece of the puzzle, the one brick that starts pulling out because their headspace isn't in the game anymore. And you gotta jump on that right then. You gotta say, hey, here's why we're here. Here's what we're supposed to be doing. So what we did is we trained. We trained constantly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Repeat it until you got it down. We trained constantly until everything became second nature. Just train as you fight, and fight as you train. And then the planning. If the plan's not there, the training can't follow. The plan's got to be great. And you got to what if it to death. We used to have this saying that if something went wrong, poor planning. We didn't plan for it. Now, obviously you can't plan for everything, but you stand there and you try and come up with every single plan you can, and then you implement tough, realistic training according to those plans. And then, if your leadership is outstanding at every level, and I mean every level, we're David Floyd. Now, I'm a pretty squared away guy, but I can't fire everything. I can't handle it all. I need David Floyd to lead by example on that machine gun that he carries. That's his job. If he's doing everything as great as he can do, then I know we're going to be squared away. But if David's not holding up to his end of the deal, and he's not holding up to his standard on that machine, I can't count on him 100%. Leadership, lead by example. Train as you fight. Plan. Planning, training, leadership. Those are 3 things. You can call them what you will, but that's what's key to mission success and mission failure. So we were quick flight in. Let's just say that this is north right here. Birds are going to come in from the north. If there's 2 city streets like this, target building sitting in the middle of these streets, birds are going to break off. They're going to go down 2 streets like this. Little birds come in first. Little birds are a bubbled helicopter, a 2-man piloted bubble. Remember Magnum PI? TC used to fly up and down the beach on Magnum PI in that little bird. Except ours has rockets and guns and really bad men hanging off the outside of it. So those guys would go in first. The Delta operators would go in first. If you don't know what Delta operators are, they're like your Pro Bowl, NBA All-Stars of special operations. They're who we most wanted to be. In fact, the Army doesn't. The jobs that they do are so secret sometimes the Army doesn't even acknowledge that they exist. So I didn't just tell you that they were there. But they were. And they went in first, and they hit the target building. Now, as we're coming down through the aircraft, the Black Hawks would come in right behind them and then rope the Rangers in at 4 corners of the building. The Delta guys would storm inside. The Rangers would put up a perimeter on the outside. That way, they were good to do their job on the inside and know that we had their back. My job as the team leader in the door of the aircraft was quite simple. I had 2 responsibilities. One was to identify the target building. Once we were over the target building, give the thumbs up to the crew chief, confirm that, and kick out the rope. Problem was, as we came down the street, we're creeping down at about 50 feet off the ground, and the dirt is kicking up everywhere. It's swirling in and out of the aircraft. You can't see anything. I couldn't see the ground. I don't know how the pilots were seeing where they were going. I'm wondering maybe the Blackhawks got some dust-busting equipment that I don't know about. And I'm looking at the pilots. You know what, though? I never had to doubt them. Even though I heard Chief Brown look over at Chief Wood, and he comes over the headset, and he goes, hey. He goes, I can't see anything. Can you see anything? I can't see squat. I'm back here in the back. Wow, this isn't good. Pilots don't know where they're going. But I never doubted them because they always put us on the money. I could count on those men 100% and then some. You know why they put us on the money? Not because I was their buddy. It wasn't because we hung out talking and we were best friends and we talked about Christmas and our kids. They had a job to do. And that's what they came to do. They had a job to do, and if they knew, if Chief Brown did not do his job and put us on the money, he knew he was the one piece of the puzzle that everything hinged upon. Because if he put us somewhere else and didn't put us where we were supposed to be, right on time when we were supposed to be there, that meant that that corner of the building was not covered. That meant that those guys on the inside we're screwed. That meant that we were someplace else and we weren't covered, which meant we were screwed. And the whole mission was going to collapse because Chief Brown did not do his job. But I never had to worry about that because we could count on each other 100% and then some. And when he flared that aircraft, then I saw the target building. I saw the little birds coming off the rooftops. I saw across the street, I could see the Rangers going off of those helicopters. Time to go. Ropes kick out both sides of the door. My second job is to look at the rope and make sure the end of it hits the ground. This may seem like a very simple task to you. However, if there's 60 feet of rope and for some crazy reason the bird is 70 feet off the ground, what does that happen when you hit the end of the rope? Yeah, no rope, and that's not good. So make sure the rope's on the ground. Okay, we're not too high, we're good to go. Now remember, you got 70 pounds of gear and everybody's going. Most of the guys are already heading out before the end of the rope hits the ground. Grabbing on, 70 pounds. Now there's this thing called gravity and it will yank your butt out of an aircraft whether you are ready to go or not. So make sure that when you commit that you have a hold of the rope. All right, don't just, what's going on out there? Because you're going to go. Now the guy behind us in one of the helicopters that was coming down the street behind us, Todd Blackburn was a young Ranger, had reached for the rope. The bird had to yank. He lost his grip on the rope, and he fell 50 feet. Wham! He was out, broke his back, and was out of the fight before it even began. Now, we knew going into it that we should plan for a casualty. So luckily, we had an evacuation plan for someone who was hurt on infill. So Todd Blackburn, to this day, is good to go. He's a police officer down in Florida, but he couldn't tell you what happened that day. But we saw 50 feet. He fell out of an aircraft. You're not tied in. You're not roped in. You're not harnessed in. You're just grabbing onto a rope with your gloves and you're going. The only thing you have to slow you down is your grip and your feet, which don't do a whole lot of good when you got guys coming right behind you. I'm the last one out of our aircraft. As I reach in for the rope, I look at Ned Norton. Ned Norton was the crew chief on my side of the bird. He looks like Darth Vader at this point. He's got a big black helmet with a big black visor down here and his breather mask on. And he's looking at me. And he's got this sticker that he had put on the front. It was red, white, and blue. And it said, "No fear." And he was very proud of this sticker. And he's looking at me. He's like, "Remember, no fear." Now, you can hear gunfire going off on the objective. No fear! Right. Screw you! Yep. He's flying away. It's very easy for Ned to say. No fear! Suck up! You know. But I hit the ground and we're right where we need to be. And we're right at the corner of the building and we're right exactly. Everything's going down good. Now, there's incoming rounds. It's not... There are people shooting at us, but it wasn't that bad. And I always laugh when I say there are people shooting at us, but it wasn't that bad. It's kind of a weird thing. It wasn't that bad mainly because they were shooting, but they were missing horribly. So that's what you want. That's the preferred outcome if someone's aiming a weapon at you, is that they miss. Well, we were on the corner of the building. The mission is a success. We got 12 of the bad guys on our most wanted list were in this building. Now, Adeed wasn't there, but we got them all out. We got them all out. We were waiting for a ride home, and that's... waiting. The mission was done. I'm already thinking about, wow, I could finish that letter home. I'm a combat veteran. I could qualify for a VA loan right now. You know? And that's when the first helicopter got shot down. And just like that, everything changed. Just like that. We thought we were going home. We thought it was done. And the first bird goes down. And we spent the next 18 hours moving to that crash site, securing that crash site, fighting until they could come in and help us out the next morning. And for those of us who make it out of something like that where other people did not, you will spend the rest of your life thanking the person who was on your left and your right. Because like I said, it's by the grace of God. It's the only reason that we made it out of there. I know that to be a fact. Now, man, if I had an hour and a couple beers, I could tell you all kinds of stories about amazing things that I saw on that day that can be defined as nothing less than heroic in the truest definition. And everybody in here has heard stories about the ordinary individual who does the extraordinary deed. Well, I've seen extraordinary things. I truly have. And listen to me, it doesn't have to be combat. You've seen it. You've seen it down on the Gulf Coast. You've seen it out there on the California coast when homes were burnt to the ground. You've seen it out here when tornadoes leveled communities and people stepped up to help. You've seen extraordinary things. I saw Doc Strauss, his ability to stay so calm and run back and forth between wounded men out in the middle of the street with people shooting at him. If there had been water there, he would have walked on it. God loves medics. I don't know how Doc Strauss managed to stay alive, not get shot, and saved countless people. Doc Strauss was extraordinary. My platoon sergeant, Sergeant Watson, his ability to orchestrate all of us throughout that chaos. You know, the next morning, there were no more rides left. We put all the wounded men on these vehicles. They drove away, and there was about 50 of us had no more room. I couldn't believe that we were at that. How did it come down to this? I got to run out of the city now? I could have done that last night. This is ridiculous. Sergeant Watson was the only man who went in charge of a helicopter full of men. He was the only one that brought every one of them back. Now, given the circumstances, I find it truly extraordinary what he did. And I will never forget the video footage that I saw of Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart. Not only did we lose that first Black Hawk, another Black Hawk got shot down. And there was just nobody left to get to them. The Humvees that were driving around the city trying to get to us were shot to hell. And they couldn't get to these guys in time. Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart were two Delta operators. They were up in one bird that was in the sky. And they saw that second crash site, and they knew nobody could get to it. And they saw the bad guys coming in. Now, they told us we were outnumbered 10-1. I am telling you the truth. When I saw that video footage the next day, those men were outnumbered. It was at least 200 militia were moving towards that crash site with weapons in hand. And these two men knew what they were going into. And they volunteered, repeatedly being told, no, you can't go, we can't risk the aircraft. There's men alive, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go now. So that pilot put them down 200 yards over here where he could safely land. Those two men sprinted under fire, and they got to the wreck, and they sat there and methodically held off the bad guys in hopes that somebody could get there in time to save one pilot who was still alive, Mike Durant. And these guys fired round after round. Remember, these are Delta operators. They're as good as it gets. They do not miss. Pow! Pow! Until they ran out of ammunition. They ran out. And they were overrun. And they both died to save that one guy. And they were both awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. When I tell you it's a privilege and I tell you it's an honor to come in here and tell the stories, I mean it. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Because if I don't tell their stories, who's gonna? Who's gonna? And if you have a grandpa that's still alive from World War II, get his stories out of him while you still can. Because if he doesn't tell the stories of his folks around him, who's gonna? Now, don't think for one second that any of those extraordinary deeds were done by ordinary individuals. There was nothing ordinary about those guys. There's nothing ordinary about anybody that wears the uniform today. Because it's the day in and the day out. I believe that everybody in this room has the ability to step up to greatness. If you're standing on the corner and a car hits, pow, there's a car wreck. Yeah, you're going to run out there and you're going to help. You're going to do you're going to use your life-saving capabilities that you know because you're a good human being. But what about on the daily basis, day in and day out? Are you leading by example? Are you setting an example for others to follow? Are you really? Are you trying to do that? That is what makes them extraordinary. Because day in and day out, those guys did that. They led by example in everything that they did. If you walk out of here, man, this is what, in my time with you, remember this. You are not an ordinary individual. There is nothing ordinary about you. I don't even want to hear, if you don't even start saying it. Because when you start saying it, you use it as an excuse. And when you start using it as an excuse, you start to believe it. And when you start believing it, then you stop trying to self-improve yourself. Because you're thinking, what's the point? And when you stop self-improving, you stop leading. You stop leading by example. When you stop leading by example, you stop making a difference. And then what are you doing? You're taking up space. You are not ordinary. You can go around this planet. Gotcha, I got a clock right here. Thanks. I'm a pro at this. You can go around this planet and search out, and there is no one else like you. You are one of a kind. You know that, right? You're one of a kind. God gave you all kinds of gifts. And what you choose to do with those gifts, that's entirely up to you. But with those gifts, you can do something that makes a difference. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I don't pretend that it is. I don't get up here and preach to you and say, hey, go out there and make a difference. It's easy. All you got to do is lead. It's not. It gets tough. I understand that because there's always obstacles. And we knew it as Rangers. We would stand up there every morning and recite the Ranger Creed in formation. The first stanza of the Ranger Creed said, recognizing I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession. I volunteered fully knowing the hazards. Now, I don't know if y'all have a creed, I don't know if Robin gets up here and makes you chant something. She's pretty motivated. She's got a nightstick. You gotta watch out. Recognizing I volunteered as an IT specialist, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession. I don't know. Yeah. If you need a creed, I have one for you. It's on the walls of the Ranger Regiment. It's on the walls of the Delta Compound. It's on the walls of every single Special Operations unit out there. And this one's from the Bible. It's from the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 6:8, chapter 6, verse 8. Isaiah 6:8 reads, "And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Who will go for us, and whom shall I send? And I answer, Here am I. Lord, send me. Send me." Now there's your volunteer. There's your one person. There's the piece of the puzzle that makes everything work. Thank you for being that person. But good Lord, it doesn't stop there. Once you step forward and volunteer, now you've become part of something that is much greater than yourself. You've become part of a team where there's someone on your left and there's someone on your right counting on you, right? Counting on you to deliver. And it's up to you to deliver because you volunteered and you said, give me the job, send me. Now, the best lesson I ever learned was from the first day that I walked into the Ranger Regiment and the Sergeant Major was standing there and he's telling us all, "Men, I want to congratulate you all for choosing something that's an honorable and noble profession." And he says, "Many of you will go on to long, distinguished careers in the Ranger Regiment." He goes, "But some of you will do your time and you'll get out." And he goes, "Remember this, wherever you go," he says, "the world needs Ranger doctors and Ranger lawyers." He was from Guam, that's why he's talking like this. "Ranger doctors and Ranger lawyers and Ranger teachers." And what he meant was the world needs Rangers? No, the world needs leaders. Your family needs you to lead. Your community needs you. Yes, your job and your people and your coworkers and those around you need you to lead by example. And the nation needs great leaders. But we need people. That's why the Rangers' motto is Rangers lead the way. Now, I don't carry M4 rifles anymore. I carry guitars. And I get to do what I love. And I'm going to play you a song. And when we go over there on these USO tours, this is the song that I will play whether we're doing the gigantic show on the stage or whether we've flown off on a helicopter to some forward operating base and all I can bring is this. And there's no mic. You just got a platoon of guys standing there with weapons slung and they're standing there looking at you. And this is the song that I play. When you play in the Grand Ole Opry, you get to do two songs. You got to play your radio hit and then you get to play one more. And you choose that song wisely, and this is the song that I play. And it's because it really sums up what I just spent 36 minutes talking about. I can do it in one song. And it's about stepping up and doing the right thing, even when you'd rather not, because it's hard. I know it is. I don't pretend it's going to be easy. I don't know what it is y'all do. But even when you'd rather say, not me, you got to step up and do the right thing. And that's what this song's about. It's just three stories. And I can name everybody in this song to you. Now, Claire's back there with me today. Should never put your guitar next to a light. Claire's back there with me today, and she brought some CDs, and what we always do whenever we do charity events that sponsor the Warrior Foundation, the Hero Fund, and that's what we're here to talk about. If you guys want the music, buy the music, and we give the proceeds to the Warrior Foundation and the Hero Fund. And so we're real proud of what we've been able to do. And this song's called Not Me. And thank you all for allowing me to come in. Thanks, Robin. You got that up? No one raised their hand that day when they asked for volunteers. He got picked out by default, was the only daddy there. We know what you're thinking, choose someone else instead. But this league was built on coaches who stood right there and said, not me. I could never find the time. Not me, no, not me. But the world becomes a better place when someone stands in how you lost your folks. There's no next of kin. Brother and a sister, she knew how hard that it would be. But she softly said, I'll raise them, while the voice inside her screamed, not me. But the world becomes a better place when someone stands, leads the way, steps forward, when they rather say, not me. A young captain at attention, star pinned on his chest. He recalls the battle while the final roll calls are read. They were the finest soldiers, and was my privilege to lead. They deserve the medals, the men who died, not me. Not me, no, not me. I did what I was called to do the same if it was you. Not me, Lord knows not me. Yeah, but this world becomes a better place when someone stands and leads the way, steps forward, rather say not me. Yeah, yeah, steps forward when they rather say not me. Not Thanks, y'all. God bless you. 440.